Right, so we're still in Jersey, believe it or not, for our project, second project, as we look at a still life. I always think that it's worthwhile having a look at still life from time to time. It may not be our chosen subject always, but to have something that is fairly exact and in this case particularly it's quite linear. There are lots of vertical lines and horizontal lines. But it's not just the drawing side that interests me about still life, it's the way that we look at the colour. And still life often brings in all sorts of different aspects of the study of colour, because not only do we get the actual colour of things like the books, but we have to take into account the shapes of the books. And for instance, this centre one here, the blue one, how it clearly is rounded and how the colour varies considerably to what's the depth between each book and the roundness that you achieve by using lighter colour to bring that shape out. We also can see other interesting things in terms of colour, which we'll come back to later, but just very quickly, you get that lovely change of colour at the back as it picks up colours that are around. You get things like reflected colour, reflected light, as the light hits the edge of that part of the bookcase there and reflects back onto that shape there. But from a drawing point of view, first of all, just one or two things to share with you in terms of the way I think it's going to go for me. There are lots of verticals and horizontals, as I've suggested, and my suggestion to you is that you make, it's more or less, but you make the line that the book stand upon, the books and the arrangement, horizontal. And similarly, as you look at the verticals, they're not quite, but I would suggest that you make the verticals vertical. You see, it's not exact, but I would suggest that is a better way of constructing the drawing by making them vertical. This edge here is the shelf they're standing on, obviously, but you get a hint here about what's happening with that shelf, and that shelf is rounded. And again, we'll come back to it later, but there is a variation of colour to help suggest that. The other thing to point out, though, before I'll let you loose on the drawing, is where you're standing, where you're viewing the subject. You're actually here as you look on it, again, look to it, but also you're above it because you see the top of the shelf. But my point in this respect is that that line there, you only see the edge of that part of the bookshelf there, and then because you're above it you actually see the top of it slightly. But as you look this way you begin to see the side edge, the sides or the fronts of the book slightly, and it's clear here at the end where you don't see anything here on this side, but on this side you do. You see the facing edge of that part of the book stand there. So do be careful on the drawing. Like last time, we can focus on negative shapes to help construct the drawing. My suggestion would be you begin with a horizontal line there, and then you pitch one of these lines here vertically so you can see how the arrangement is going to build up. And then the background, we will mention colour later as I've suggested, but you've got these uprights here which also adds to the scene. If you want to crop it a bit, then yeah, that's up to you. You can do so and make it very much your own. But I think it does demand quite a careful drawing. I would suggest that you don't go to town necessarily. We're not expecting all these letters and these words to be visible. My approach would be just to screw your eyes up as you look at it, and you'll see that certain letters stand out, like possibly the C or the O or one of the T's. So you could hint at various letters without spelling exactly what's there. If you do go that way, of course I should be checking the actual spelling to make sure you've done it correctly, which is another reason for not going into too much detail. So drawing first, and then we'll work on in a little while. Thank you.